Hello everyone, and welcome to the Warlock class version. Before we jump into it though, I would just like to say that the Warlock has always been a very fun and unique class in DnD. I think it has a very high popularity because of its very customizable features that it has within it, and it's those very unique options that you can, utilize and that the class has. Biggest things are going to be the Eldritch Invocations, the fact that you can kind of almost build out the Warlock that you really want. I mean, in the 2014 version, they did not have a lot of core fundamental kind of features unique to the class. However, the invocation list allow you to kind of build out almost the class in a way that you kind of wanted it to function, which I think is why it was so popular. I think it had a lot of variability, and that just was super cool. And I think that's what kind of has drawn a lot of people to the Warlock. But regardless of the invocations that the class has, I do feel like that even though that a lot of the heavy lifting does come from the invocations in terms of features for it, I do think that the class should still have an additional, a substantial amount of features. That way the class still has that kind of fundamental and kind of rooted identity in what it is, and kind of has those features that give the class flavor and kind of breathe in some life to it. Because though the invocations allow for a lot of customization, I think that I think core class features are where you can get a lot of the RP and a lot of the flavor that kind of brings out what this class is and how you kind of role play in it. And so that's kind of one of the biggest things that I kind of was thinking about when adding various features to the class. Obviously, Wizards of the Coast and the Unearthed Arcana, they also have added a couple things in there which I have taken and adjusted a little bit. But I think ultimately the Warlock is now in a better spot. And I think with Eldritch Invocations, with how their magic works, and now with the additional features that I've added and that WotC has added, I think it all kind of comes together for still a very customizable class. But you now have a little bit more of that rooted identity. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright, so above me, you're going to have the Unearthed Arcana that I'm going to be referencing. To my side here, you're going to have my version of the Warlock. And then, of course, we have the 2014 Player's Handbook to see where we've come from and see how it compares to now. So, here we go. So, you have the Warlock table here, and then you have the hit points, which are going to be unchanged. Proficiencies are going to be unchanged as well. Tools, armor, armor's going to be light. Weapons are going to be simple weapons. Equipment is as level 1 character. You can start the following equipment, or you can forego it and spend 100 gold pieces on equipment of your choice. That is similar to the Unearthed Arcana, and essentially you can either choose the equipment and just hit it and get it, or you can go through and spend the gold allotment that they're allowing you to choose there. So, all right, getting into the meat of it here. The class features. Level 1, Eldritch Invocations. In your study of occult lore, you have unearthed Eldritch Invocations, fragments of forbidden knowledge that imbue you with an abiding magical ability or other lessons. You gain one invocation of your choice, such as Path of the Blade or Path of the Tome. Invocations are described in the Eldritch Invocations section at the end of this class's description. If an invocation has a prerequisite, you must meet it to learn that invocation, and you can learn the invocation at the same time that you meet its prerequisite. For example, if an invocation requires you be a warlock of level 5 or higher, you can select an invocation once you reach level 5 in this class. When you reach certain warlock levels, you gain more invocations of your choice, as shown in the invocation column of the warlock table. You can't pick the same invocation more than once unless an invocation description says otherwise. All right. So I will say one of the nice things about and this was a change that the Unearthed Arcana had made, is that instead of getting Eldritch Invocations at 2nd level, you are now getting Eldritch Invocations at 1st level, which I think is pretty cool. I think that kind of makes sense, and you can even see that's adjusted here so that the Invocations is now 1 at 1st level, whereas in 2014, you got no Invocations, and you got 2 starting at 2nd level. And so I think that's a good adjustment. I like that, you get that initial one, and it kind of lets you almost start setting up the framework from your Warlock from the very beginning. Because additionally, not only do you get your Eldritch Invocations, but you're also going to be getting your Pack Magic and your Warlock subclass. And then additionally, not only do you get it at 1st level, but you can now go up to, when you capstone out at 20th level, you now have a total of 10 invocations, whereas before in the 2014, it capped out at 8. So earlier you get them, and more you get at the end of the day. So really cool. I do think more options are always better, and so I like that change. Now, level 1 is going to be Pact Magic. Through an occult ceremony, ritual, or interaction, you have formed a pact with a mysterious entity to gain magical powers. The entity's identity is unclear or perhaps not fully realized, their true intentions not yet revealed. But its boon to you is for certain, the ability to cast spells. Not going to go through all of this, but the biggest kind of summary here, I'll go and just kind of slow scroll here in case you want to pause it and read through it yourself. But the biggest thing for Warlock, for those that are not familiar, is essentially instead of just as you progress, you gain access to more spell slots per spell slot level. Instead, what happens is your slot level and your spell slots almost grow together. And so you can see here in this portion of the column, or this portion of the table, as you progress, you get more spell slots. And then your slot level goes up. And so you then, so here at 3rd level, you get 2 spell slots, and your slot level is 2nd. So you only have that level of spell. So you only have 2nd level spells. As you progress, you'd only have 3rd level spell slots. You only have 4th level spell slots. And then you only have ultimately 5th level spell slots. And so instead of having the option range between 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, you only have you only have the annotated spell slot level. So there we go. Wow. Woof. All right. Which is cool. And I think that's the thing. I think right off the rip here, Eldritch Invocations and how Pact Magic works is a big draw for people in Warlock. And I think that, with Eldritch Invocations, with it starting earlier and you getting more, and then not only Pact Magic, what I did with Pact Magic, the only adjustments that I made was that instead of capping out at 4 spell slots, you cap out at 6 now. I felt that if obviously the Warlock does function in a unique way, and I like that. But I think that just because all your spell slots are a 5th level, I don't think it's necessarily cap out at 4 like how it traditionally does in for half casters or for full casters. I think that in the back half, as you can see here, that once you hit 13th level, to 13th to 16th level, you have 5 5th level spell slots, and then from 17th level to 20th level, you have 6 5th level spell slots. I just think it makes the Warlock more unique. Not only do they have all their spell slots at one level, but they also have more. They're the only class now that have 5 5th level spells or 6 5th level spells. So cool. Moving on to the Warlock subclass. You gain a Warlock subclass of your choice. A subclass is a specialization that grants you special features at certain Warlock levels. For the rest of your career, you gain each level of your subclass. Yeah, okay, so Warlock subclass. Big thing here is Wizards of the Coast, and I mentioned this in other videos as well, in the other class videos, they wanted to, for some reason, across the board, make every single subclass gained at 3rd level. You gain a subclass at 3rd level. I do not like that. The community, for the most part, from what I've seen, does not like that. And so I have removed it, or I have replaced it back to 1st level, because that only makes sense for the roleplay and the kind of timeline of a Warlock. All of your things come, kind of fundamentally from your subclass, and you kind of making this pact, making this deal with whatever entity it is. And not only that, but I'm just now thinking about this, it is kind of strange for them to bump Eldritch Invocations down to level 1, and then but then shift the Warlock subclass up to level 3. So that even makes less sense, if I would have left it how they left it here. So anyway, so yeah, 1st level Eldritch Invocations, Pact Magic, Warlock subclass, very good. All right, moving on. Magical Cunning. This is going to be a UA feature here. Level 2, Magical Cunning. If all of your Pact Magic spell slots are expended, you can perform an Esoteric Rite for 1 minute, at the end of which you regain half of those spell slots, rounded up. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So, pretty awesome. Because you have a limited amount of spells, you can essentially just do a quick 1 minute little ritual there, and you can get half of them back, allowing for a lot of that rejuvenation of resources. Which, additionally, going back real quick to Pact Magic, one of the also big differences between the Warlock and other classes is that they get all of their spell slots back on a short rest, which is really good. And then you have Magical Cunning, which you can then get your half of them back again just for 1 minute. And so you have a lot of ways to get your spells back, which is really, I think, a benefit and a good thing to have involved with a class that kind of functions like the Warlock does, in terms of the fact that it has such a limited amount of spell slots. So alright, level 3 is going to be a homebrewed feature, Otherworldly Reconstruction. After completing the Esoteric Rite for your Magical Cunning feature, you also heal a number of hit points equal to 2 times your Warlock level. If you already have full hit points, you instead gain temporary hit points equal to 2 times your Warlock level. So, kind of the reason behind making this is I did want I wanted there to be some, cool, more role-playing, more like kind of interesting features that the Warlock has. Though fundamentally this feature isn't necessarily super insane, I do think it's pretty cool, and I think that the DM can RP it in certain ways, and this can kind of strike up for some various encounters in terms of maybe how the Warlock was able to heal quickly, or whatever it is, whatever you kind of want to open the floor to. But I think that this is kind of cool because not only now can you recover some of your magic, you can also recover some of your health, which being I don't even want to say half caster, but you know, a caster of sorts, you only having a D8, you know, to your HP, or a D8 is your hit dice for your, you know, hit points. I think adding a little bit of healing is always a good thing. So level 4 ability score improvement is going to be the same as pretty much every single class and as it was before. Level 5 is going to be a homebrew feature, gifted knowledge. Through committed service and loyalty to your pact, your patron bestows upon you knowledge that will aid you in your future endeavors. Choose any combination of 2 skills or tools to gain proficiency in. I think this is pretty cool. I like the idea that as you're kind of showing this fealty, this service to your patron, that they bestow upon you, you know, various gifts. You know, the fact that you can do this right and recover magic, you know, magic and health now at 5th level, after you're kind of, you know, developing that relationship early on, you know, your patron is now, you know, giving you insights into, you know, knowledge that was not once known to you. I just think it'd be cool, especially if you're DM. I think the Warlock is a really like kind of DM RP heavy class, and so I think these features allow for the DM to be able to capitalize even more so on that. And so not only that, I think that, you know, always giving classes more proficiencies and more abilities to kind of excel in the various areas that players want their characters to go down is always a good thing. So especially since they can choose tools, and so, you know, 5th level, depending on how long it took, you know, your party to get to 5th level, I think that they can definitely perhaps utilize this tool proficiency almost a little bit more than perhaps the skills, you know, having maybe interact with the world and maybe, you know, thinking about various ways that they could utilize tools to help them in their quests. So all right, 6th level is going to be the subclass feature. Level 7 is going to be an additional homebrewed feature. I would just like to say that, you know, the Unearthed Arcana essentially only really added the magical cunning feature, and then they added the 9th level feature, which we'll get to, and then they revamped the Eldritch Master. They really didn't do a whole lot to the Warlock. I think that they kind of just were like, hey, here's more invocations. We'll call that good. You guys enjoy that, which, like I mentioned before, is good. I still think that there should be more core features of a class. I just do. I think that each level of a class should give you reward the player with something. I think that makes it so that people actually want to stick with a class for longer instead of feeling the need to multi-class. And so that's a big reason why I've added so many kind of homebrewed features to this class, which this one I really like. So level 7 is going to be Soul Guard. You've displayed usefulness and loyalty to your patron to the point where losing your service would come at a significant cost to them. You gain the following benefits. Continuous service. If you drop to 0 hit points, you can choose a number of hit dice that you wish to expend in order to heal. Resolve the hit dice as you would normally. Your hit points now becomes the result of the expended hit dice. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Note, if the player does not wish to utilize this ability, but the patron that the Warlock is involved with feels the need to intervene, then for role-playing purposes, the DM can activate this feature. From the brink. While making death saving throws, you can choose to expend a number of hit dice equal to half of your total hit dice amount, rounded down, in order to automatically succeed on one of your saves. For example, if your total hit dice amount is 8d8, you'd have to expend 4d8 to activate this feature. Note, if the player does not wish to utilize this ability, but the patron that the Warlock is involved with feels the need to intervene, then for role-playing purposes, the DM can activate this feature. Alright, so I really like this kind of the flavor of this feature, and the kind of the reason why I added it in is the fact that, like, as you're developing this relationship with this patron, with whoever it is that you kind of have this pact with, I think that as you become more significant to them and the things that they're trying to accomplish, I think it just makes sense for them to actually, you know, be bestowing upon you a lot more, or certain features or abilities that allow you to stay in their service. I think that's just kind of cool flavor. I think it's just a fun way to make it so that you can kind of demonstrate that through a feature. Not only that, but I mean, being able to come back to and, you know, heal from the brink of, you know, being knocked down is always good. And so I just think that it's just a cool way to show this kind of commitment that now that this, not only that the player has, but now that the patron has towards the player. Now, I added the note of if the player does not wish to utilize this ability, but the patron of the Warlock is involved with feels the need to intervene, then for role-playing purposes, the DM can activate this feature. I added that in mainly to, you know, create story elements and to kind of almost initiate that kind of those thoughts that the DM might be able to have with this feature. I by no means am saying that the DM should, utilize this in a way to be, to be an asshole to the player. If in certain instances, this is not a way for the DM to be able to, hijack the player's character and do just all these different things. I think that this could be utilized in such a way, these features could be utilized in such a way that could, create story beats, create narratives, and kind of flesh out, the story of the Warlock and this character and kind of how their relationship to this entity is. I think that I want to throw that in there because I think that way that the DM's gonna kind of have that in the back of their head. Not to say you have to utilize it, not to say you necessarily should utilize it, but it's there so that way, if it wasn't thought of before, the DM can definitely now kind of have that as a tool for narrative purposes. That's it. Please, DMs, do not utilize this in a way that, pisses off the player or whatever. That's not the intention of that at all. So, but overall, I think this is a very solid feature. And I really like, and I've seen a couple of homebrewed features, the utilization of hit dice outside of just, hey, short rest, roll HP. I like that this, this is still taking away from a resource, or it's still costing a resource, but in a fun and unique way. And that's kind of a lot of the big reason why I'm utilized in making some of these features, is to kind of give the Warlock a little more of that flavor, of that kind of exchange of life for abilities and features, and this kind of contract that they have, and what kind of the cost that comes with unlocking these powerful features. Because being dropped to his 0 hit points, be able to immediately snap back up and heal is very good, but it comes at a cost to the player and to the character. So I think it can create for some very cool narrative moments and fun RP. So moving on, level 8 is going to be an ability score improvement. Hooray! Level 9 is going to be contact patron. In the past, you usually contacted your patron through brief, one-sided communication or through intermediaries. Now you can communicate directly. You always have the contact other plane spell prepared. With this feature, you can cast a spell without expending a spell slot to contact your patron, and you automatically succeed on the spell's saving throw. Once you cast a spell with this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. This is a UA feature, and I really like this. I like that they also did this with the cleric and the commune spell that you get, and I just like the fact that they're kind of adding features in that Wizards of the Coast has kind of added features in certain character deity or character patron or character entity, whatever it is, relationships. I like that they've added features in that allow for that role-playing kind of to kind of happen, that you can almost proc that interaction. You can almost force it in a certain way. Because I've always really liked being involved in whether it's a cleric or whether it's a paladin or whether it's a warlock, and the relationship that these characters have with their patron. I always like getting involved in that, but maybe some DMs don't do that. Maybe it just kind of depends. Maybe it's a little bit more of a distance of a relationship. But I like that as you're progressing in this class, you can now almost provoke that conversation rather than always having to wait for it. So that's a very cool feature, and I like that they they added that in there. So level 10 is going to be a subclass feature. Level 11 is going to be the Mystic Arcanum. Your patron bestows on you a magical secret called an Arcanum. Choose one level 6 spell from the Warlock spell list as this Arcanum. You can cast your Arcanum spell once without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you do so again. As shown on the Warlock table, you gain another Warlock spell of your choice that can be cast in this way when you reach levels 13, level 7 spell, 15, level 8 spell, and 17, level 9 spell. You gain all uses of your Mystic Arcanum when you finish a long rest. Whenever you gain a Warlock level, you can replace one of your Arcanum spells with another Warlock spell of the same level. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so honestly, it's kind of a cool, even, a unique way for the Warlock class to gain access to those higher level spells, but, still have this unique function to them. Super cool. That is how 2014 literally had it, and that is how it remains. And so, moving on here to level 12, ability score improvement. 13 is going to be the Mystic Arcanum, which is going to be your 7th level spell slot. Level 14 is going to be a subclass feature. Level 15 is going to be Mystic Arcanum, which is going to be your 8th level spell. 16 is going to be ability score improvement. 17 is going to be your 9th level spell. Level 18 is going to be no class feature. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but I wanted to kind of have a distinction between half casters, full casters, and of course the Warlock, who's a strange caster. I wanted to make sure that there was a gap in features that the class gets in order to kind of give the martial class a little bit more of an edge in terms of core fundamental features. However, obviously the Warlock has invocations, and so I would say at this point in time, the Warlock definitely has the most features of any other class, because of not only do you get all the ones that you have throughout your class and your subclass, but you then also now get 10 invocations. So, but I think the invocations aren't so insane necessarily that, you know, that you're getting 10 insanely broken features. I think some are, you know, definitely good, and some are just, you know, access to spells, which we'll actually go ahead and jump. I'm gonna kind of explain some things at the end of reading through all the class features. But yeah, there's a gap there for that. But I mean, there's a gap, but you still actually at 18th level you do get an invocation, so you're essentially still getting a feature, and then you are, yeah, I mean, you're still essentially getting a feature from the Eldritch invocation. So 19th level is going to be an ability score improvement, and then 20th level is going to be Exalted Power. Your lifelong loyal service and commitment to your patron has been recognized and rewarded. You've been bestowed the following gifts. Complete Restoration. When you use your Magical Cunning feature, you now regain all of your expended pack magic spell slots and hit points. If you are already at full hit points, you can gain temporary hit points equal to 2 times your Warlock level. Unwasted mana. If you miss with a spell attack or a creature resists a spell effect from a single target spell, you can use your reaction to quickly recover the fleeting arcane energy, resulting in the spell slot not becoming expended. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Eldritch Overload. You can expend Eldritch energy in order to boost your physical and mental attributes. For the number of spell slots you choose to expend using this feature, you increase one of your ability scores by that amount for the next 8 hours. For example, if you decide to expend 3 spell slots to increase your strength score, it would go up by 3 for the next 8 hours. The amount of spell slots you designate cannot be restored until the duration of this feature expires. You can end the duration early as an action. Whether you end the feature early or the full time elapses, you gain levels of exhaustion based on the amount of spell slots used. 1 to 2 spell slots equals 1 level of exhaustion, 3 to 4 spell slots equals 2 levels of exhaustion, and 5 to 6 spell slots equals 3 levels of exhaustion. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you have finished a long rest. Alright, so kind of working our way through here. Complete Restoration. You now gain all of your packed magic spell slots back and your hit points by doing that 1 minute esoteric rite. Extremely, extremely good. Yeah, honestly, and I think it's just kind of, it plays into the fact that, you know, with your lifelong service to your patron, they're giving you this ability to just fully recover, kind of on a moment's notice, and with the adjustment of the spell slots, and the fact that, you know, you're only gaining your 5th level spell slots, which is still extremely good. However, it is, you know, you're still limited within that well of magic, and so a really good resource to prolong your utility while in various encounters. And not only that, but you obviously, and I didn't actually mention this when I was going over the Magical Cunning, but you also gain temporary hit points if you are full health. And the reason why I wanted to do that was I wanted to at least make sure that this feature wasn't just, you know, say that all you're out of is spell slots and you want your spell slots back. You're not just wasting this feature, or you're not utilizing a certain portion of it. So, and 40 temporary hit points is pretty good, especially for a caster. So, Unwasted Mana, I just thought this was super cool. I thought this could be kind of an awesome way narratively for, a moment in combat to, for the DM to explain. It's just a strange feature, and I think it's just something that the Warlock should have. I think the Warlock, regardless of who your patron is and who your subclass you chooses, I think ultimately the Eldritch magic that you have access to and the features that you get, just them being strange, and just like kind of off the beaten path of how a lot of other features work, I think is just really cool. This is a really good feature. But obviously you can only use it once per long rest, and it is limited to just if you are making a spell attack or if you're targeting one creature. For, like, say you wanted to cast Hold Monster or something and they resist it, you can essentially just get the spell back. And so utilizing your reaction. So there's an action economy to it. And then Eldritch Overload, I was thinking I didn't want to necessarily just give the Warlock a raw stat boost. I wanted there to be, like I've said before, like a strangeness to it, like a very unique way that they can do it. And so I thought this was pretty cool. I do think that this could maybe use a little bit of adjustment in terms of balancing. Haven't necessarily play tested it yet, but please let me know what you think. If you play tested, please give me some feedback on that. But I think it'd be really cool the fact that you essentially can burn spell slots to increase attributes depending on the situations you know you need them to be. Or situations that you might need to utilize certain things. And then for balancing, I made sure to lock those spell slots out. That way you couldn't just channel 6 spell slots into or 4, 6, whatever it is, spell slots into an ability score, and then immediately use your complete restoration and get them all back, and then just be this insane, just tank, or not tank, but just insanely powerful, just everything at your disposal still, character. So yeah, that is going to be all the core features of the Warlock, but let's go ahead and go over some Eldritch Invocations in the sense that there's just some things that I've adjusted. Biggest things for Eldritch Invocations is I've compiled all of them from all source materials, and I put them in together in a fully comprehensive list alphabetically, which is pretty cool. I've actually added a couple homebrewed ones, which I'll go over. But the big thing is I wanted, obviously, everything to be in one place. And then I went through and I kind of balanced a little bit some of these features. I made sure that there was some level prerequisites. I felt like before, even looking through all the source books, there weren't a whole lot of level prerequisites. Some of the features were blatantly better than others. And the only level prerequisite, the most I saw was like level 5 or level 9. It was pretty low considering some of the features you gained. And so I really wanted there to be a little bit of balancing with that in order to force players to have to progress through the Warlock in order to unlock some of the better invocations. I didn't want them to be able to jump in, maybe only dedicate a couple of levels to Warlock, be able to grab some really good invocations and then switch over. I wanted there to be definitely some progression to the class, especially since the invocations are kind of the core features you're getting and you're selecting. I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of there's like progressions of play. I wanted there to be, a reason for people to stick around for Warlock. So you can see here, level 9 Warlock, then you have the Pack of the Chain, and then you have level 5. You just have various now, level 12 you have right here. You just have various level thresholds that you need to now meet before you can gain access to all the invocations. And so I think that just makes it a little bit more fun to progress through. Kind of you can now choose invocations that you're looking forward to, and you're wanting to get. Now, I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the features in 2014 were the Pact boons, which is Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, and then Pact of the Tome. That used to be a feature, and you basically got those in addition to your Eldritch Invocations. However, now what they did, a big change, they actually just made the Pact of the Tome, the Pact of the Chain, the Pact of the Blade part of the invocations list, and so you can either choose them or not choose them, which I think is cool. It gives you some more variability in the fact that if you don't want to necessarily run one of those, you don't have to. And I believe those Tashas, they had Pact of the Talisman, so that is here as well. So they have actually now 4 packs that you can do. And then through those various packs, you then have Investments of the Chainmaster, prerequisite level 5, Warlock, Pact of the Chain. Like you start out with those those early packs that you can make, and then as you progress through, you can unlock the better features that tie to those, which is super cool. The Warlock is so customizable. It's super, super cool. And I love the way that they've done it. So, and then the biggest reason why I added some into the pool here was because there wasn't a lot of high-end invocations that I felt that needed a high prerequisite threshold. So I added Tongue of the Farwalker, which is prerequisite level 18. You can understand and speak all standard languages. Super good for just communication and roleplay. Toughness of Telgorak is going to be level 18th Warlock. You gain immunity to 1 damage type of your choice, except for Force. Super cool. You can just fully negate 1 damage type. So that's pretty sweet. I feel like that's definitely warranted to be way up there. And then I had a couple other ones here. I got a little 15 Umbral Senses where you have Blind Sight with a range of 30 feet. Landstrider's Footwork, which is level 18. You gain a climb speed equal to your speed, and you are no longer affected by difficult terrain. Unveiled Sight, you gain True Sight with a range of 30. That was, I believe, Witch's Sight or something like that, but I increased the prerequisite and then renamed it. And then Zelzorhan's Keys, which is level 15 Warlock. You can cast Mordekainen's Magnificent Mansion without expending a spell slot. Once you use this feature or invocation, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Just added some variable level 12, level 15, level 18, just so that way there are things to look forward to in the back half of the Warlock. And then last thing with the Eldritch Invocations, I did go through, and you might see some of the names have changed. I did want to go through and I wanted to adjust some of the names because I felt like some of the names were very one-sided in terms of what that invocation could be geared towards. Like for instance, Devil's Sight is now Dark Wanderer's Sight. And the reason why I just changed the descriptor of it and the title of it was just so that way, say you are a celestial kind of based Warlock, or even just like a great old one or whatever it is. I wanted there to be more kind of neutral titled invocations to make it so it didn't like clash with anything, because to have Devil's Sight while in fealty to an angel doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I made sure to kind of go through there, make it a little bit more neutral, just to make a little bit more sense. So yeah, that's about it though. Man, Warlock I think is in an awesome spot now with the capstone ability just being incredibly good, and then with some early on features just kind of giving them a little bit of an edge and kind of having that core identity of the class come out a bit. And then of course with the invocations that you can choose, the Warlock can just really be kind of whatever it is that you want. And so yeah, that's about it. If you want access to this PDF, the link will be in the description of the video. I did make this PDF with the Homebrew website, and so if you want to check that out, it's super cool. You can make D&D styled PDFs and documents, which is what I did, and so I think it's super awesome. And then, of course, if you have any constructive feedback for this version, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. I'm very curious as to what you guys think. And that's about it. So, yeah, I guess I'll see y'all in the next video.